church in the east of France is where I got married more than 15 years ago. But I didn't grow up near this church. I grew up near this church in Lancashire, in the northwest of England. And my parents got married in this church more than 55 years ago. And for their wedding reception, their wedding party, they went to a beautiful half-timbered house called Samsbri Hall. You can still have a wedding reception in Samsbri Hall. You can even get married in Samsbri Hall. And your wedding guests can stay in a little hut, in a little shepherd's hut, in the grounds behind the hall, in the Shepherd's Hut hamlet. Hello, I'm Rachel. Welcome to Smile English Stories, where you can listen to English in lots of different contexts. But you need to subscribe and hit the bell if you want to get a notification from YouTube. Today, we're going to Lancashire. Lancashire in the past was famous for its witches. So if I speak too slowly or too quickly, you can change the speed in YouTube. Kids love Halloween in England. When I was little, we used to dress up for Halloween. We used to dress up as witches and ghosts and vampires and other horrible creatures. And we used to play games. We used to play games like ducking for apples, like a little duck, quack quack, or passing apples under our chins, or apple snap, like a crocodile. Today, kids still dress up for Halloween. Sometimes they make costumes, or sometimes they buy costumes in a shop or in a supermarket. I grew up in Lancashire, and from our house and from my school we could see a hill, Pendle Hill. Pendle Hill isn't very high. It's only about 395 metres above the ground, but 557 above sea level. If you like walking, it's a nice walk to walk up Pendle Hill. And from the top, you can see the Yorkshire Dales and you can see the sea on a good day. It takes about 2.5 hours to climb to the top. But sometimes the weather is not so good on Pendle Hill, and the clouds come down, or it's very misty and you can't see. And when you can't see, it's very spooky. Very, very spooky. About 500 years ago in England, in 1532, Henry VIII was King of England, and Henry VIII was married. He had a wife, Catherine of Aragon, and Catherine had a baby. But Henry VIII was not happy because he had a baby girl, not a baby boy. Poof! Henry VIII didn't want a baby girl. What for? Henry VIII wanted a son. He wanted an heir. He wanted a successor. And Henry VIII was in love. He was in love with a lady called Anne Boleyn. Henry VIII was frustrated and he decided he wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon, the mother of the little baby girl, and he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. But he had a problem. Henry VIII was Catholic, and in 1532 the Pope in Rome decided everything, and the Pope didn't want Henry VIII to get married to Anne Boleyn. So Henry VIII decided to separate from the Catholic Church. He decided that all England would separate from the Catholic Church and England would become Protestant.
Oh well.
About 100 years later, England had another king, King James VI of Scotland and King James I of England. And King James was Protestant too. And King James didn't like the Catholics. He hated the Catholics. He persecuted the Catholics. He even executed the Catholics. And in Lancashire, there were a lot of Catholics. So in the early 1600s, the Catholics in Lancashire had to practice their religion in secret.
Shh.
In those days, and still today, people were very superstitious. If you had special powers like magnetic healing, or if you practiced herbal medicine, people might have thought you were a witch, and they might have tortured you or executed you. It was a dangerous time for the Catholics in Lancashire. In 1612, 12 people were accused of being witches. They lived around Pendle Hill and they were escorted on foot to Lancaster Castle, which is not far from the sea. They had to walk 70 kilometres. 70 kilometres round Pendle Hill, over a river, the River Ribble, and through an enormous forest. I think it must have taken about 2 days. When they got to Lancaster Castle, they were very tired and they were put in prison. They were put in prison and one of the old ladies died in prison. Then they were tried. The trial lasted for 2 days. The judge found one person innocent, but the other 10 were found guilty. And they were hung. They were hung like in the game Hangman. So be careful, because if you go for a walk on Pendle Hill, you might see the ghost of a Lancashire witch, because people in Lancashire say that the witches came back to haunt Pendle Hill. And on Halloween, a lot of very brave people go witch hunting on Pendle Hill. I would be too scared, wouldn't you? And Samsbri Hall, where my parents had their wedding reception, has a witch story too. In the 16th and 17th centuries, the Southworth family lived in Samsbri Hall. They were quite a rich family and quite a famous family in England. But they were Catholics, and it wasn't a good time to be a Catholic in England. One of the boys, John, went to France to study to be a priest. But when he came back, he was put in prison, and then he was executed. But some years later, the Catholic Church made him into a saint. Another of the boys married a Protestant girl. Her name was Jane, like my middle name. But the family didn't like Jane because she was Protestant and they were Catholic. But her husband loved her and protected her. But when he died, she had a big problem. Her husband's uncle, Christopher, said she was a witch. He said she made magic cream out of a baby's fat. And he sent her to Lancaster Castle, and she was tried with the other Lancashire witches. But she was lucky. She was found innocent. But if you go to Samsbri Hall, and if you visit the Great Hall in Samsbri Hall, you might get a shiver down your spine. And if you get a shiver down your spine, you might have felt the presence of the White Lady, Lady Dorothy, who is the most famous ghost of Samsbri Hall. Lady Dorothy was one of the girls of the Southworth family, so she was a Catholic, but she was in love. She was in love with a Protestant boy, and they wanted to get married. But of course, Lady Dorothy's father didn't want Lady Dorothy to get married to a Catholic boy. So Lady Dorothy and her lover planned to run away. They planned to elope. But the horrible Uncle Christopher found out about the plan, and he killed Lady Dorothy's lover and some of his friends. And he sent Lady Dorothy away to another country. He sent her abroad. And poor Lady Dorothy couldn't eat and she couldn't drink, and she died of a broken heart. And people say that Lady Dorothy has come back to Samsbri Hall. She haunts the Great Hall. She haunts the fields around Samsbri Hall. Sometimes you can see her by the road near Samsbri Hall. One day, a bus driver stopped because a lady was waiting for the bus. But when he opened the door, there was nobody there. And one day, a couple were walking their dog. She walked straight through the dog's lead. Spooky. Was it the White Lady Dorothy looking for her lost lover? Do you believe in ghosts? Have you ever seen a ghost? Are you just a little scared on Halloween? If you like witches, you could go to a famous little local shop near Pendle Hill. Its name is Witches Galore, and there are lots of souvenirs you can buy of the Lancashire Witches. They even have an internet site, so you could order something online for Halloween. But I'm not sure if they ship things abroad, if they send things to other countries. So I hope you enjoyed my Halloween stories. If you did, give me a thumbs up and share the video with a friend. And I'll see you next week for another story, this time for the beginning of November. And it might be a story from France. See you next time.